cornered in a freezing alley and shielding her puppy from a knife. The homeless woman thought it was the end, until a Navy SEAL stepped out of the shadows to change everything. Witness the heart-pounding rescue as a soldier and a loyal German shepherd take on a ruthless gang, proving that true justice fights for the broken and brings them home. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please subscribe more. The wind in Chicago didn't just blow, it hunted. It tore through the canyons of steel and glass, carrying the biting chill of Lake Michigan. A winter storm swallowed the small mountain town of Winterdale, snow falling so thick it blurred every streetlight into a pale, trembling halo. Thalia Morrow, 13 years old and painfully small for her age, trudged through the drifting white. Her coat, an old olive-green parka 2 sizes too big, hung on her like a borrowed shell. The fur lining had long since matted, and one sleeve had been stitched twice by her mother's trembling hands. She held a paper bag of donated bread and canned soup close to her chest, trying to shield it from the wind. Beside her walked Hawk, a 5-month-old German shepherd pup, with oversized paws, a black saddle marking on his back, and ears still unsure whether to rise or flop. Hawk's tail stayed tucked low, but his sharp amber eyes kept checking on the girl, sensing her worry as though it were a scent carried on the cold. The street behind the Winterdale market was dim, the snow rising around the dumpsters like small dunes. Thalia's breath fogged in weak pulses. She whispered to Hawk about getting home soon to her mother, Cora Morrow, a once vibrant woman, now pale and bedridden with an illness the family could no longer afford medication for. Thalia's heart tightened whenever she pictured her mother's thin fingers reaching toward her in the candle-lit room they shared. As she turned into the narrow alley behind the butcher's shop, 3 men stepped from behind a stack of snow-coated crates. The first, lanky and sharp-angled, wore a dark jacket with a ripped collar. His face was narrow, his eyes too alert. Griffin, known in town as Silas Crow's errand boy. The second man, round-shouldered and broad, with a beanie pulled low over greasy blonde hair, sniffed sharply as if irritated by the cold. His name was Marlowe, a habitual drunk with a laugh locals hated. The third, the quietest, had a shaved head and a scar running from brow to cheek. Derek, the type who followed orders simply because forgiveness was never offered to him, not since the accident years ago, when he crashed his older brother's truck and carried the guilt in silence. Griffin's smile slithered across his pale face. "Evening, little Morrow." He lifted his chin toward the paper bag in her hands. "Cute supplies, but we're not here for charity food." His gaze drifted to the strap of Thalia's sketch satchel. "Silas wants his drawing back." Thalia clutched the satchel instinctively. The memory burned hot in her chest. The day she had gone to the pines outside town, hoping to sketch the snow falling on the ridge, only to witness 3 men unloading unmarked crates at the forest edge. She had drawn before she realized how strange the scene was, and someone had seen her. She felt her stomach drop as Griffin stepped closer. Marlowe kicked at a mound of snow, spraying flakes over Hawk. "Hand it over, kid," he growled. "Silas doesn't like loose ends." Derek said nothing but shifted his stance, a man torn between orders and discomfort. Thalia noticed that, but fear drowned any hope it might have given her. Hawk stepped in front of her, small but determined, a rumble rising in his throat. Griffin scoffed. "Seriously, the mutt?" He lifted his boot as if to kick the pup aside. Thalia's heart seized. Her mind spun with flashes, her mother coughing, the cold house, Hawk's warm body curled beside her at night. She hugged the sketch satchel to her chest. Her knees trembled so hard, she felt she might fall through the snow. Then a voice cut through the wind, deep, steady, edged like a blade. "That's enough." A figure walked out from the curtain of falling snow, a tall man with square shoulders and a gait that suggested past injuries. Alden Reeve, a 36-year-old former Navy SEAL, who had returned to Winterdale 2 winters ago after losing 2 teammates in an ambush overseas. His short, dark hair was flecked with snow, his jawline shadowed with a few days' worth of stubble, and a faint scar traced the line of his temple. A souvenir from a blast he never talked about. Alden's eyes, ice blue and watchful, carried the weight of a man who had seen good people vanish in seconds. He kept others at arm's length, not out of cruelty, but out of fear that caring again would break him. Tonight, though, he didn't hesitate. Griffin sneered. "This ain't your business, Reeve." Alden didn't answer. He simply moved, swift, decisive. He intercepted Griffin first, gripping his wrist with a twist that made the man cry out, sending him dropping to the snow. Marlowe swung clumsily, but Alden sidestepped and slammed his shoulder into the man's chest, knocking him breathless into a pile of crates. Derek, startled, raised his hands as if to fight, then reconsidered and bolted down the alley, boots slipping in the powder. Alden let them flee. The snow swallowed their retreating forms. Thalia stood frozen, tears gathering in her lashes. Hawk pressed himself against her legs, still trembling from fear and cold. Alden approached slowly, lowering his voice. "You're safe now." He removed his heavy military parka, lined with fleece, scarred at the sleeve by a burn mark, and wrapped it around Thalia's shoulders. The warmth hit her like a shock. She hadn't realized how numb her arms had become. Thalia tried to speak, but her voice cracked. All she managed was, I didn't mean to see anything." "I know," Alden said quietly. He looked down the alley where the snow was already covering the footprints of the fleeing men. "But they meant to hurt you, and this storm won't make them less desperate." Hawk whimpered and nudged Thalia's numb fingers. Alden extended a gloved hand to her, his tone softened, still firm, but carrying a gentleness that surprised even him. "Come with me. This storm isn't safe for anyone, especially tonight." The wind howled through Winterdale as Thalia took his hand, unaware that this single step would pull all 3 of them, girl, soldier, and loyal pup, into the heart of a danger far colder than the winter around them. Snow clung to Alden Reeve's shoulders as he guided Thalia Morrow through the curtain of trees leading to the small veterinary clinic tucked at the edge of Winterdale's pine forest. The building itself, a refurbished cabin with smoke curling from its stone chimney, glowed faintly against the dim storm. Icicles hung like glass daggers from the eaves. Hawk padded beside them, the little German shepherd pup's oversized paws sinking into soft snow, his breath puffing in small white bursts. Though exhausted, he stayed vigilant, frequently pressing himself against Thalia's leg as if reminding her he was still there. Alden stole quick glances at the girl. Thalia's cheeks were flushed red from the cold, and her dark brown hair, normally pinned back into a neat braid, spilled out in wind-tangled strands around her small, frightened face. She held his heavy parka tightly around herself as though it were armor. Inside the clinic, warmth washed over them instantly. A row of soft yellow bulbs cast a gentle glow, and the hum of the furnace created a steady rhythm beneath the occasional creak of wood settling. The scent of pine disinfectant and chamomile tea lingered in the air. Behind the reception counter stood Helena Reeve, Alden's older sister. Helena was 38, tall and willowy, with ash-blonde hair swept into a loose bun and thin silver-framed glasses perched on her narrow nose. Her skin was porcelain pale from long winters indoors, and her gray eyes carried a permanent softness, one earned from years of healing wounded animals and comforting frightened owners. Helena took one look at Thalia, shivering, coat-damp, eyes wide, and her demeanor shifted instantly from gentle hostess to decisive caretaker. "Alden, what happened?" she asked, her voice steady, yet colored with a sister's concern. Alden's jaw tightened. "We found trouble." Helena didn't press further, at least not yet. She crouched to Hawk's level. Her movements were slow, practiced. "Hey, sweetheart," she murmured, running a warm hand over his spine. Up close, she noticed the tremors beneath the pup's thick coat. His body temperature's low, borderline hypothermia. Talia's hand flew to her mouth, guilt flashing across her face. I tried to keep him warm. You did well, Helena soothed, as she lifted Hawk gently. Let's get him under the heater. Her tone shifted into professional clarity. Alden, bring her back here. The examination room was cozy, its walls decorated with children's drawings of animals, gifts from families in town. Hawk lay curled inside a lined kennel beside a heat lamp, his breathing slow but steady. Helena placed a small digital thermometer beside him and draped a fleece blanket over his body. Thalia stood beside the counter, fingers twisting the strap of her sketch satchel. Her throat felt tight watching Hawk shiver, and her legs trembled from a mixture of cold and fear. Helena turned to her. What about you, sweetheart? Let me see your hands. Thalia hesitated, then extended them. Helena's eyes flickered to the red marks circling her wrist, a fresh bruise shaped unmistakably like a hand. Her voice dropped. Who grabbed you? Thalia swallowed hard. She wanted to lie, to deflect, to pretend it was nothing. But the weight of everything, her mother's illness, the men in the alley, the cold, pressed against her. With trembling fingers, she reached into her satchel and pulled out her sketchbook. The moment she opened it, the page fluttered to the drawing she feared most. Helena leaned forward. The graphite lines were stark. 3 figures unloading crates stamped with an unfamiliar crest, shadows cast by the tall pines, and headlights illuminating their faces. It was unmistakably accurate. Too accurate. Alden exhaled through his nose, his posture stiffening. Helena's lips parted slightly. This is Silas Crow's men. At the sound of the name, Thalia flinched. She whispered, I didn't know what they were doing. I just draw what I see. They didn't see me at first, but then one turned around and... Her breath quivered. They started chasing me. I dropped my pencil and ran, and then they found me again today. Helena closed the sketchbook gently, as though it were a fragile artifact. Thalia, she said softly, this is serious. Alden's eyes darkened like a storm cloud. He'd known Silas Crow years before, Winterdale's most quietly feared figure, a broad-shouldered man with slicked-back charcoal hair and a reputation for smiling only when someone owed him something. Crow had once been a small-time dock worker until he inherited a collapsed warehouse business, under circumstances no one could prove, but everyone whispered about. Alden remembered him from his own teenage years. Crow had been the man adults warned children to avoid, the kind who could turn friendliness into leverage. Alden now turned to his sister. Call Sheriff Lorne. Helena froze. Are you sure? Before Alden could answer, Thalia let out a strangled sound. No, please. He knows Silas. Everyone knows. They talk at the diner. He never stops them. Please don't call him. Her small hands clutched Alden's sleeve desperately. He'll tell them I'm here. Helena exchanged a glance with her brother. Her worry mirrored his. Sheriff Lorne Harrow was a graying, barrel-chested man with thinning hair and a habit of avoiding conflicts unless they dealt with traffic violations. His father had been close to Crow in business years ago, maybe too close. Alden crouched in front of Thalia. His voice was rough but gentle. I believe you, and you're right to be scared. He straightened, pacing once beside the counter. His boots left wet marks on the tiled floor. Those men weren't just trying to scare you. He stopped and met her gaze, his ice-blue eyes steady. You drew something they don't want anyone else to see. A gust of wind slammed against the window, rattling the panes. Snow streaked the glass like smeared paint. Helena adjusted the heat lamp over Hawk and folded her arms tightly. So what do we do? Alden stared at the window, tension rolling off his shoulders. We can't let them find her tonight. His tone carried the firmness of someone who'd led men through firefights far worse than this storm. They'll come looking, and they're angry. Talia's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't want to cause trouble. Alden shook his head. You didn't cause anything, they did. His gaze softened. But until we figure out the next step, You stay with us. Helena nodded. We'll make up a bed in the back office. She's safe here. Alden hesitated before responding. His instincts screamed otherwise. The memory of gunfire and ambush flared briefly in his mind, the echo of losing 2 teammates because he underestimated the enemy's determination. His hands clenched involuntarily. No, he said finally. The clinic is too exposed, too many windows, too close to the main road. He looked down at Talia. We're taking you somewhere no one will look. Talia's eyes widened. Where? Alden zipped his coat, jaw set. My cabin by Ridgewater Lake. Helena looked worried, but she nodded. At least it's isolated. Alden gently placed a hand on Talia's shoulder. Pack your things. We leave as soon as Hawk's stolen enough to travel. Talia glanced at the kennel where Hawk lay under warm light. The pup lifted his head, eyes heavy but trusting. She reached through the bars, brushing his fur. We'll be okay, she whispered. Outside, the wind howled, cold, relentless, and hungry, yet inside the clinic a fragile warmth remained. A beginning, a promise. They had no idea that their decision tonight would ignite the first spark of a much larger storm, but for now, Alden's words lingered in the heated air, firm, protective, unyielding. We won't let them find her tonight. The drive to Alden Reeves' cabin felt longer than the snow-covered miles suggested. The storm was thickening, the flakes growing sharper, heavier, moving sideways in the wind, as if the sky itself had tilted. Inside the truck, the heater hummed, but Talia Morrow still shivered under Alden's massive military parka. She clutched Hawk, his fur warmer now after the treatment at Helena's clinic, while the pup's amber eyes blinked slowly, his breaths faint but steady. Every few minutes he nudged her arm, sensing the tremors in her fingers. Alden's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles pale under calloused skin. The faint scar along his temple caught the glow of the dashboard lights. He had driven this forest road countless times, but tonight felt different. The wind sounded wrong, too sharp, too restless, and something in his gut twisted with old instincts he had tried to smother since retiring from the teams. The snowbanks on either side of the road were rising dangerously high. It would soon be impossible for ordinary vehicles to pass. Almost there, Alden said, his voice low but steady. Talia nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed him. Her thoughts churned with images of Griffin's sneer, Marlowe's boot raised toward Hawk, the harsh grip on her wrist. And yet, beneath that fear, a different feeling flickered, a fragile thread of safety tied to the man driving beside her. The cabin emerged like a shadow carved into the ridge above the frozen lake. Built from thick logs in deep brown, its roof was layered with snow, and a stone chimney rose from one side, exhaling a faint plume into the white sky. A spotlight mounted under the eaves lit the entry path, but the swirling snowfall dulled its reach. Alden parked the truck and stepped out, immediately bracing against the slicing wind. He moved with the stiff, measured movements of a man who'd spent too many nights outside in worse conditions. He opened Thalia's door, lifting Hawk gently when the pup slipped on the icy step. Thalia followed, clutching her sketch satchel, her boots crunching in the deep snow. Inside the cabin, warmth radiated from a wood-burning stove. The interior smelled of pine, iron, and faint traces of campfire smoke. There was a wide living room with shelves lined with survival manuals, old photographs, a rifle displayed above the stone hearth, and a thick woven rug covering the wooden floorboards. The cabin felt both rugged and surprisingly lived in, like someone who didn't want company but still took care of the space in case company ever came. Alden laid Hawk near the stove and set up a wool blanket for himself. "He'll warm faster here," he murmured. Hawk yawned, tail tapping weakly. Talia sat beside him, stroking his thick puppy fur. Her heart thudded hard, but she felt her body start to unclench as heat returned to her fingers. Alden crouched in front of her. "Tonight's going to be rough," he said. "The storm is hitting harder than expected." Power outages are likely. I need you to learn a few things in case something happens while I'm dealing with other problems." Talia swallowed, nodding. He showed her how to secure the heavy metal deadbolt on the back door, how to latch the window braces, and how to use a flashlight with a strobe setting for emergency signaling. He handed her an older model handheld radio, scratched, dented, but reliable. "If anything happens and I'm not nearby, press this button and don't let go until I answer." Talia held the radio carefully. Why are you helping me so much?" Alden paused. His eyes, blue as frozen glass, flicked toward the window, where the storm howled against the pane. "Because you didn't run," he said quietly. "When those men came for you earlier, you stayed with Hawk. Most grown adults would have abandoned him without thinking. That matters." Talia's breath hitched at the unexpected warmth in his voice. "I couldn't leave him. He needs me." Alden nodded once. "Exactly." For the next hour, he went through basic safety steps: how to identify sounds made by wind versus footsteps, what to do if the generator cut out, and how to hide in the loft above the kitchen if everything else failed. Hawk, now more alert, joined the lesson as his training began. Alden worked slowly, keeping his commands gentle. "Stay close, alert, guard." The pup responded with clumsy enthusiasm, stumbling sometimes, but always trying again, earning a faint smirk from Alden. A small sense of confidence began forming in Thalia's chest. For the first time in days, she felt she wasn't drowning in fear. But by nightfall, the storm had changed. It wasn't just snowfall, it was a full blizzard roaring across the ridge. The windows shook violently, and the cabin's wooden beams groaned under the pressure. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Alden set logs into the stove. "Stay close to the fire, all right?" Talia curled beside Hawk, sketchbook on her lap. She tried to draw the fireplace, but her hand trembled too much. She put the pencil down, hugging her knees. Outside, the wind's howl shifted. A new sound threaded through it, sharp, unnatural. Alden stiffened instantly. "That wasn't the storm." His voice turned iron. The lights flickered again, then died. The cabin sank into darkness, broken only by the glow of the fire. Hawk bolted upright, ears perked, growling low in his small chest. Alden crossed the room to the wall panel where the generator and perimeter sensors were monitored. The small backup screen displayed only static. "Power's out." But the generator didn't fail. They shut the lines. Talia's pulse surged painfully. "They? Who's they?" Before Alden could answer, Hawk barked sharply and sprinted toward the back door. Then came the unmistakable sound, metal against metal. Someone was working at the lock. Alden moved, like a soldier stepping back into a battlefield. He motioned to Thalia. "Upstairs, now!" Thalia obeyed, heart pounding, clutching Hawk when he hesitated. But Alden gave a quick signal and the pup followed Thalia up the wooden steps to the loft. Alden remained below, his stance centered, silent, breath controlled. The back door latch snapped. The door swung inward, snow swirling in like cold smoke. A figure stepped through, dressed in a thick black snow parka, hood pulled low, mask covering the lower half of his face. His movements were too smooth for a local, too steady for someone braving this storm. Alden didn't speak. He lunged. They collided in a blur of fists and boots, the intruder skilled and fast, his knife slicing the air where Alden's ribs had been a second earlier. They crashed into the kitchen counter, Alden using his weight to slam the man into the wall. The intruder gasped, but recovered quickly, too quickly. Someone trained. Upstairs, Thalia crouched with Hawk, hands shaking violently as she struggled to stay quiet. Hawk pressed against her thigh, ears forward, muscles tensed. Then the sound came, another window breaking. Someone else was inside. From Thalia's left, glass exploded inward near the loft window. A second man climbed through, wearing a frost-crusted jacket and gloves with reinforced knuckles. Snow clung to his shoulders, but his eyes held no confusion about where he was going. He spotted Thalia instantly. Thalia froze. The man advanced. Hawk leapt forward, teeth bared, a furious bark ripping from his chest. The man swung an arm to knock him away, but Hawk clamped down on his wrist with surprising strength, throwing the attacker off balance. Thalia grasped the heavy flashlight Alden had given her. Her legs shook violently. The attacker wrenched his arm free of Hawk's teeth, reaching for the knife strapped to his belt. She acted before she could think. With every ounce of her fear, her anger, her need to protect Hawk, she swung. The flashlight slammed against the side of the man's head with a dull, sickening thud. He collapsed instantly, snow from his jacket scattering across the loft floor. Hawk growled triumphantly. Thalia stood trembling, breathing fast, tears streaking down her cheeks. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. "Alden, it's me," she cried instinctively, voice cracking. Alden reached the loft, breath ragged, a cut above his brow bleeding down the side of his face. He saw the man on the floor, the flashlight dropping from Thalia's shaking hand, Hawk leaning against her like a tiny guardian. Alden's voice softened, breaking through the fear. "You did good. You did more than good." Thalia collapsed into Hawk's fur as Alden stepped further into the loft, checking the window, then the attacker's pulse. The blizzard howled outside, rattling the frame like a warning. "Tonight's not over," Alden said quietly, eyes narrowing at the storm beyond. "But we're still standing, and that matters." And in the flickering firelight from below, Thalia realized that for the first time she wasn't facing the darkness alone. The storm had passed, leaving Winterdale wrapped in a brittle quiet. The snowbanks outside Alden Reeves' cabin were sculpted by the blizzard into sharp ridges, and the morning sky hung low and pale like tarnished silver. Inside, the fire crackled weakly as Alden secured the unconscious intruders with heavy-duty zip ties. Thalia Morrow sat on the edge of the loft steps, Hawk pressed against her side, his warm puppy body steadying her shaky breaths. One of the intruders, a gaunt man with thinning brown hair, an angular jaw, and dark, sunken eyes, finally stirred. His skin was sallow, stretched tight from years of cigarette smoke and exhaustion. His voice was raspy when he spoke, his tone revealing a man hardened by loyalty to the wrong people. "Crow won't stop," he muttered. "Not until he gets that sketchbook. He wants it burned. He wants the girl gone." Alden's expression darkened, his blue eyes, sharp as ice shards, locked onto the man. "Why? She's just a kid." The intruder scoffed weakly. "A kid who saw too much." Alden didn't reply. He didn't need to. The truth settled into the room like dust. Running wouldn't save Thalia. Not anymore. Later that afternoon, Helena Reeve arrived at the cabin. She trudged through knee-deep snow, wearing her thick forest green parka, her auburn hair tied back, cheeks flushed with worry. Once inside, she immediately checked Thalia and Hawk, then sat at the kitchen table examining Thalia's sketchbook again under better light. Her hazel eyes widened as she traced the lines of Thalia's drawing, Silas Crow's men loading unmarked crates near the logging road. It wasn't just a doodle. Thalia had accurately captured the logo on the crates, the serial numbers on one truck's bumper, and even the scar on Marlowe's knuckles. Helena exhaled. "Anyone who sees this would know it's evidence." Thalia hesitated, her small hands rubbing together nervously. "There's something else I remembered." Her voice was tiny, fragile, as if afraid of the weight of her own memory. "Tomorrow night, the Christmas night market. Silas Crow always comes to switch on the lantern tree. He likes everyone thinking he's good." Alden stood still, absorbing every word. Silas Crow, late 40s, clean-cut with expensive coats and a demeanor slick as oil, never missed a public event. He thrived on being seen as Winterdale's philanthropic protector, a man who hid cruelty behind charity. "In a crowd, he can't shoot," Alden murmured, mind already shifting gears. "He'll try to isolate you instead, pull you somewhere quiet." Thalia swallowed. "That's when we get proof?" Alden nodded. That's when we end this." The plan formed quickly. Thalia would appear at the Christmas market, sketching like any normal child. Hawk, now more alert, would stay close. Helena would monitor the crowd from the cocoa stall, her veterinary scrubs replaced by a thick blue coat and knitted hat. Alden would stay in the shadows, placing small body cams and wireless transmitters in strategic corners under a wreath stand, behind the hot cider barrels near the snowbank, by the frozen lakefront. By nightfall, Winterdale transformed. The Christmas night market glowed under strings of red lanterns swaying in the winter breeze. Booths lined the streets with steaming cups of cocoa, wool scarves, hand-carved wooden toys, and baked ginger cookies. Children ran with sparklers, their breath puffing into the cold air. Sleigh bells from horse-drawn rides echoed faintly. The ground shimmered with thin snow reflecting the warm lights. Thalia sat near a wooden bench under a lantern archway, sketchpad open. She wore a puffy navy jacket Helena had lent her and a knitted cap shaped like a snow fox. Hawk sat beside her, ears perked, every muscle alert. Yet Thalia's pencil moved steadily. People walked past and smiled. She looked like any Winterdale kid enjoying Christmas Eve. But Alden watched from the rooftop of the closed post office, eyes trained on the moving crowd. He scanned for the familiar silhouette, tall, impeccably groomed, dark wool overcoat, silver scarf, Silas Crow's signature look. And then he appeared. Silas walked with the confident ease of a man who believed the world bent to him. His hair was salt and pepper combed perfectly, and his smile was warm enough to fool a stranger. But his eyes, icy gray, calculating, betrayed the truth. He approached Thalia slowly. "Well now," he said, voice smooth as polished steel, "aren't you the little artist? What talent?" Thalia kept her pencil moving, even though her heart hammered. "Thank you, sir." Silas crouched beside her, still smiling pleasantly. "You know, I sponsor young artists. I'd love to give you a place in my gallery. Maybe we could talk about it somewhere quieter. Too loud here, isn't it?" The words sounded friendly, fatherly even, but his fingers tightened slightly on her sleeve. Helena watched from the cocoa stall, face pale. She whispered urgently through the earpiece, "Alden, he's leading her behind the rink." Alden was already moving, boots silent on the snowbank. Silas guided Thalia behind the ice rink toward a narrow path leading to the snow storage sheds, large wooden huts used to hold equipment for the winter festival. The lantern lights dimmed here. Footsteps muffled under deeper snow. Silas dropped the smile. "Give me the sketchbook." Thalia hugged it to her chest. "No." Silas clicked his tongue. "Children shouldn't make big mistakes." He reached into his coat. A slender metal baton unfolded with a soft metallic snap. "Come quietly now." That was when Hawk charged. The puppy's bark ripped through the silent snowfield. Sharp, furious, echoing across the back lot. Silas spun, startled, and Alden stepped out from behind a snowdrift, the white frost swirling around him, his shoulders squared. His voice boomed like a winter storm breaking. "Silas Crow, step away from the girl." Silas froze for only a moment, long enough for Alden to lunge. Alden twisted the baton from his grip and forced him face down in the snow, cuffing him with practiced precision. Behind them, lanterns swung in the wind as townspeople rushed over, murmurs rising in a wave. Helena arrived with her tablet, live streaming everything. "Smile for the state police, Silas." The footage captured the assault attempt, the weapon, Silas's threats, everything. And Helena had already sent Thalia's sketches, audio snippets, and Alden's camera footage directly to the state police. No local officer could bury it this time. As Silas was hauled to his feet, snow clung to his coat, wiping away the polish he hid behind. Alden placed a steady hand on Thalia's shoulder. "It's over. You did brave tonight." Thalia looked down at Hawk, who wagged his tail proudly. "We did it together." Morning settled over Winterdale in a muted glow. the kind of post-storm calm that made the world feel both fragile and reborn. The worst of Silas Crow's shadow had finally lifted. After his arrest at the Christmas night market, captured on cameras Helena set up and witnessed by half the town, the state officers had escorted him out of Winterdale under flashing lights. The townspeople, weary from years of subtle fear, carried themselves differently now, shoulders less hunched, greetings louder, smiles no longer cautious. For Thalia Morrow, the world thawed slowly, like the snow melting into silver ribbons across the frozen edge of Ridgewater Lake. She still slept lightly, still flinched at loud noises, still kept her sketchbook close like a shield, but she also smiled more, and she no longer walked alone. She and her mother, Miriam Morrow, a pale, soft-spoken woman with gentle gray eyes and long ash-brown hair that had grown thin from months of untreated illness, were finally safe. With Silas removed from the equation, Helena Reeve had arranged for specialists from the county hospital to examine Miriam. They found the infection that had been slowly weakening her, and with medication, warmth, and rest, the color began to return to her cheeks. Miriam was slender, a bit frail, but her spirit surfaced like a bird learning to fly again, and she often cried quietly in gratitude whenever Helena checked her vitals. Helena herself had changed too. Beneath her tired hazel eyes was a new determination, a new protectiveness. She insisted Thalia and Miriam stay in the small rental cabin behind her veterinary clinic, an old cedar structure with 2 rooms, warm lighting, and a clear view of the Pine Ridge. Thalia helped around the clinic when she could, folding towels, cleaning counters, feeding convalescing animals. She had started to laugh softly when Hawk bumped her with his oversized paws, or when Helena teased her gently about being the bravest patient I've ever had. Hawk, now fully recovered, had grown sturdier. His black and tan coat gleamed with health, and though he was still technically a puppy, his stance had begun to carry the posture of a young guardian. His dark, almond-shaped eyes tracked everything, and whenever Thalia walked across the clinic yard, he padded beside her with a youthful but determined focus. And then there was Alden Reeve. On the outside, he looked unchanged, tall, built from hard muscle, jaw sharp beneath a few days' worth of stubble. His dark hair always a little tousled from wind or habit, but there was a softening in him now. Something in his eyes shifted whenever he saw Thalia sketching in the clinic garden or whenever Hawk trotted at her heels. Something unspoken had anchored him, pulling him back from the drifting emptiness that had followed him since leaving the SEALs. He visited the clinic daily, claiming it was to help Helena fix the generator wiring or check that the snow around the fence wasn't icing over. But Helena wasn't fooled, and neither was Thalia. Alden always ended up carrying heavy crates for Helena, repairing the latch on the back door, or shoveling a pathway to the rental cabin before sunrise, so Thalia and her mother wouldn't slip. One late winter morning, when the snow shone like crushed silver over the lake, Alden took Thalia and Hawk out to Ridgewater's edge. The lake had begun to thaw, thin lines of water cracking through the sheet of ice like veins of light. The pines around them dripped from the slow melt, each drop catching the weak sun. Thalia wore her thick navy winter coat and knitted fox ear hat. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, but her eyes were bright, brighter than Alden had ever seen. Hawk bounded through patches of softening snow, occasionally skidding, then shaking his fur dramatically as if affronted by the indignity of slush. "I made something for you," Thalia said softly, pulling a wrapped board from her satchel. Alden blinked. "For me?" She nodded, handing it to him with both hands. The board was wrapped in parchment, tied with string. Alden loosened the knot, unfolded the paper, and froze. The drawing was alive. Thalia had captured him standing against a roaring blizzard, shoulders squared, jaw set, coat whipping in the wind. Hawk stood beside him, chest forward, eyes fierce. And in the shelter created by Alden's stance and Hawk's body, there was a small girl clutching her sketchbook, her hair blowing across her cheeks, her face lit in soft, trembling hope. He inhaled sharply. The cold suddenly felt distant. "You kept us safe," Talia whispered, eyes down. "Me and Hawk and my mom. So I wanted to draw that part, the part where you didn't let the storm take us." Alden swallowed hard, the emotion catching unexpectedly in his throat. "Thalia," he said, voice lower than he intended, "you're stronger than you think, stronger than you ever give yourself credit for." He rested a steady hand on her shoulder, not heavy, not commanding, just present. "And I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. If you need me any time, you call, you knock, you shout, I'll come running." Talia blinked, tears forming, not from fear, but relief. Hawk let out a bark, sharp and bright, as if adding his approval. Alden chuckled for the first time in months, ruffling the pup's ears. "And you, troublemaker, you did good too." Hawk beamed in the way only dogs can, tail sweeping snow behind him. They walked along the thinning white shore, snow crunching beneath their boots and paws. The wind carried the scent of early spring, pine sap warming, lake ice weakening, the faint earthiness of soil reawakening beneath the thaw. The three of them, a former soldier haunted by storms, a young artist learning to trust the world again, and a loyal German shepherd pup, moved forward together, leaving behind footprints that trailed toward the coming spring. And, for the first time, the path ahead didn't look frightening. It looked like a beginning. In the quiet after the storm, when the snow had finally stopped whispering against the rooftops of Winterdale, one truth remained. Even in the coldest nights, even in the fiercest winds, God never leaves the ones who walk in the shadows. He sends help in the most unexpected ways, sometimes through a soldier with a wounded past, sometimes through a loyal German shepherd pup, and sometimes through the small, brave heart of a 13-year-old girl who refuses to give up. Miracles aren't always loud. They don't always come with halos or thunder. Most of the time they arrive softly, in the form of safety found, family discovered, and hope restored. And just like Alden, Thalia, and Hawk learned, God's light always finds a way through the cracks, no matter how heavy the snow may fall in our lives. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that protection can come from above and love can grow from the coldest places, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and what miracle you're praying for. Click subscribe so you won't miss the next story of faith, courage, and the quiet ways God works through everyday people. And tonight, may God wrap you in His warmth. May He guard your home, calm your storms, and bless every step you take. If you believe in new beginnings, if you believe God is still working in your life, type Amen in the comments to claim this blessing.